Are you getting the most out of the adjustability in your driver? In this video, I'm going to be explaining why you should be using that adjustable hosel more and showing you what all the different settings mean, so you can dial in those shots and maybe even get rid of that slice. Driver adjustability is something that often can be massively overlooked by golfers. We have this tool in the hosel of our club that can help us change our shot shape, our trajectory, and really just control the golf ball better. But not only are we not always getting fit for our clubs, which allows the fitters to use this, but we're actually not even then using this when we take the club away. I think some of that comes down to the fact that everyone has a different system for this. Not every manufacturer has the same letters or numbers, and it can be kind of unclear how to adjust these, but also because we maybe just don't understand just how much we can change our shot shape and improve our shot pattern by using these devices. So today I'm going to talk you through loads of different brands, how their hosels work, what you can change, and also use my drive to show you just how much the shot shape can change out on the golf course. So why might you want to use the adjustable hosel? Well, hopefully you've already been for a fitting for your driver and this has been used by the fitter and set up perfectly to your game. But the reality is still loads of golfers are just buying clubs straight off the rack and they haven't had a fitting experience. So using this can help you dial in your game. Also, a lot of us go out and work on our games, change our swing a bit, and then it might be that we need to go back in and dial in the driver, change the settings, so we don't actually have to buy a new club, but we can get the better performance for our new swing. Also, sometimes we just hit it different. Golf is never the same day to day, isn't it? And sometimes you just go on the range, you're hitting a massive slice, you can't get rid of it, and you've got to go to the golf course in 15 minutes, and you think, well, I could just tweak my driver to help me out for today. I think this is a really interesting one because I've had so many different settings on the hosel of my driver over time. As my swings change, I've just been playing or feeling a little bit different, and it's really helped me out in terms of my performance. So what can you actually change on the hosel? Well, there's a few different things. The big one I think a lot of people know about is loft. So if you suddenly want to hit it lower or higher, you have the ability to change that on the hosel. But I think a big thing people don't realise is most of these drivers allow you to tweak the lie angle. So just as with an iron, why you might flatten your lie angle or make it more upright to bring your shots in straighter and stop them going left or right, you can do exactly the same thing with a driver. And most of these hosels have different systems, so you can change the height or also how far left or right the golf ball is going. And some of them allow you to do that separately, so you could keep it straight, neutral in the middle, but make the ball go higher. Some of them are more combined, so if you move it up or down, you're also going to get a little bit more left or right burst. So let's get into that. So this is my Titleist GT2 driver, and I would say Titleist probably have one of the most unique hosel systems in the sense that it's got 4 letters and 4 numbers, and they're all completely interchangeable. So you can end up with 16 different hosel combinations to change the ball flight completely from what it was. Now, Titleist actually have a really handy graphic which you can look up online, which explains all the different shot matrices, and what I didn't realise when I first looked at this over the years was that it's actually a picture of basically the golf course in front of you. So if you were stood about to hit the golf ball and you looked down the fairway or down the hole where you're about to hit your shot, this grid is a visual of what you would see in front of you. So A1 is their neutral setting, and that's kind of straight and a mid-flight trajectory. But if you wanted to go up to D4 or up to A4, that's just moving the ball up higher. So as you actually look visually, if you wanted the ball to go high and left, you would go to A3. If you wanted the ball to go high and right, you would go to B4. And I think that's a really good visual to be able to look at this graph and think, right, well, my driver is currently in this setting. If I want the ball to go further left, further right, up or down, higher or lower, you can just look at this graph, see where the ball flight currently is, where the current setting is, and move up to the setting that's in the right flight window for you. So I currently have this set in A4, which is neutral but with extra loft. So when I got fit into this, the 9 suited me best, but I needed a little bit of extra launch, and actually I just hit this more consistently in the A4 setting than I actually did with the 10.5 loft driver head, which is quite an interesting thing in itself. And sometimes you find that just the visual of a certain club suits you better. And you can actually have a club like this, which is effectively playing as a 10.5 loft, but I actually hit it better with the 9 set at 10.5 than the 10.5 at neutral. Golf's really weird sometimes. So with this hosel, you can move to a 1.5 upright or to 0.7 flat. And typically if you flatten the club, it'll go a little bit more to the right. And if you make a club more upright, it'll go a little bit more to the left. So that's probably why we see more options in the upright section and you can move more extreme, because generally most golfers move it left to right rather than right to left. What I think is really important to note here is that you don't always have to have your lie angles and your irons and woods matching. Obviously, when we're hitting irons, we're hitting down on the golf ball. There's turf interaction, and that's completely different to when we're hitting up on the driver. So for me, historically, I've pretty much always been too flat in my irons, but actually most of the time I'll be upright in my driver. So it's definitely worth fiddling around with this and seeing what's best for you. But right now, let's hit some shots with this in different settings and see just how much the ball flight changes. While you're here, I would really appreciate if you could hit that subscribe button. Over 80% of people watching my videos aren't currently subscribed, and actually having a bigger subscriber number really helps in terms of what content opportunities we get and then what great videos I can bring back to you. So please hit that subscribe button, and while you're there, you might as well give this video a like and drop us a comment about what else you want to see on the channel. Right, back to it. So first what I'm going to do is switch this into Titleist A1 setting, and that's what any driver would turn up in if it was kind of stock or you bought it just out of a shop. And that's what they say is like a neutral ball flight, so it's just like a mid-flight in terms of height, and it should go fairly straight. Depends on how you deliver the club, obviously. So I'm going to hit this in that kind of neutral A1 setting, and then what we'll do is move to the extremes, kind of high slice, low draw, low fade, high draw, and see just how much the ball flight visually moves. I think that's one of the great things about this tool is that you don't necessarily have to have a launch monitor with you when you're tweaking this and moving it around. Really what you want to be looking at is the ball flight and if it's doing the thing you want it to do. Let's hope my swing is neutral as well as the club. Now, you've got to remember, just because this is set up neutral doesn't mean you will hit it neutral. If you have the swing that creates like a fade or a draw, you will still hit that shot in this kind of A1 setting. It's designed to just let you do what your natural pattern is, and then you can move left or right, up or down from there. So it might not be that the A1 is like in that position for you, but you just have to move in the direction away from that A1 where you want the ball to move. So generally what I'd recommend is people hit a few shots in kind of the setting it comes in or the setting you've currently got your driver in, and just establish a base of where the ball is going with those shots. From there we can then move left or right, up or down, and see if that gives us a better result. Golf is weird in the sense that sometimes, say I put this in a setting that's meant to be a low draw, you can almost see that when you stand to the ball and set up for some people, and then it makes them do the opposite. So they can kind of see it shut and low, and they'll kind of change their swing to hit it out to the right. So sometimes you do have to mess around with this. It's not always a case of this is what should happen and then it happens. So sometimes you do have to mess around with these settings because you can do different things. I was out with TaylorMade once, and I actually got fit by Scottish Effortless Fitter, which was a really cool experience. And he was like, yeah, if I set the club up to fade, you hit a draw. And if I set it up to draw, you hit a fade. So some people are very reactional to what they see down at the golf ball, and some people aren't at all, and then you'll just be able to follow the grid. So don't panic if something different to what you expect happens. That's probably what's happening. Now, most of us just want the ability to hit a high draw. So let's put this into A3, which is the most upright setting, and also the setting with the most loft. Generally, we see people want to hit it higher and they want to hit it further left. I hate hitting the ball left, so see how this goes. Well, it did what it said it was gonna. I didn't change my swing at all then. That is purely just from adjusting the loft and the face angle. Now, actually, I would say it probably didn't go necessarily that much higher than some of my other shots, but I think that's just because the club face was so shut, and I also have a tendency to shut the face down. So setting this up to go left is definitely not the one for me. But if you're someone who hits it out to the right, you can see how that would really help. Now let's drop down to D2 and see how much lower that goes. So this is basically just moving down the left side of the chart and going from top left all the way down to bottom left. Now, I've had times in the past where I was a really bad slicer, so I would hit it really far high right, and when I had like the 915 Titleist driver, I would literally put it in like D2, and that would straighten my ball fly out. So these settings are worth using. Definitely a little bit lower, also left, but probably not quite as drastic up and down as the left and right shape were for me. Right, should we see how far right we can get the ball to go? It's a bit more of my comfort zone, although I really just like to hit it straight, but that's very unachievable because getting the face and the path perfectly straight is like An impossible task. So, high right would be B4. Probably the shot no one wants to create unless you literally play a course where you have to hit it left to right. Augusta, maybe? God, this looks so different. It's weird how much it can actually change how the club face looks on the ground, even though you're just like moving some cogs around on the hosel. Still makes no sense to my brain, that. Oh, that went very high. And straight down the right side. Straight into a bunker, actually. Not ideal. It was a nice strike, though, tell you what. When I'm having those days where I'm really worried about snap hooking it, and sometimes when I do that, the ball flight gets really low, like, actually, that high right little block would be nice. Obviously, it's not gone as far left as the left ball did, because we're only moving the lie angle 0.75 to the right. First, we were going 1.5 left, so you can see why it's not quite as extreme on the right-hand side. And generally that's because there's not as many golfers who hit the ball left, so most of the time you don't need to move it right. And ultimately, if you did want to kind of use Titleist and hit more of a fade, you'd probably go into the GT3 model, which has the adjustable weight track on the back, which you can make more fade biased, or the GT4, which is just a more fade biased build. Personally, as much as I don't like the ball going left, I like the forgiveness of the GT2 because it's the most forgiving head, so I can not strike out the middle and get away with it, so that's most important to me. Right, last up we've got C1, low fade. Who wants to hit a low fade? Not me. Those two right ones went remarkably on almost identical line with the same lie angle, so that's pretty interesting. Hopefully that's given you a good picture of just how much you can change your ball flight with these hosels. I think sometimes people think it won't make as much of a difference as it actually does. I mean, there's at least 50 yards left to right between the ones in the most flat setting and the ones in the most upright setting. If you're someone who's really struggling with a hook or a slice and you want to straighten out your ball flight, please use the settings available to you, because being able to move the ball 40 yards left of where you currently hit it could really help you out on a golf course. Okay, so what happens if you have a driver that's not a Titleist? Well, I'm going to run through some different options with you now, and you will see there is kind of a general consistent theme between them. So if you do have a driver that's not in the options I showed you today, it should still give you a good idea of what to do with your club. So first up, let's go ping. Now, I quite like how theirs works for simplicity, because on the front here you can see we've got the standard neutral setting, which is where the kind of circle is in the middle, and that's how your club would come stock. And then from there we've got like 2 minus symbols and 2 plus symbols. So this side is all about moving loft, so moving the ball flight up and down. If you wanted your ball flight to go lower, you'd move to the minus symbols. If you wanted it to go higher, you'd move to the plus symbols. I think that's a really simple and visual system that just makes sense to anyone looking at it. Now, just because they only have that there doesn't mean that's the only options on this driver. So if you turn it round to the back, you can actually also control the lie angle here. So you can either make the club a degree flat or a degree upright. Now, as we've said before, if you're a slicer, you want the ball to go more left, you want to be moving more upright. If you're maybe drawing it a bit too much, you want the ball to go a bit more further to the right, you want to make it flatter. Now, next up we've got TaylorMade, and this is one of the most similars to pings in terms of how it works. So you've got options to go higher, add loft, lower and take loft off. But actually you've got the option to move 2 degrees up or down here rather than the 1.5 that we typically see with most manufacturers. Now, you don't have to go all the way to that 2 degrees. You can see there's little lines around here, and each of those represent a fraction of that, so you can move it round in kind of 0.75 degree increment. Now, we don't have the option to make this one flatter, but we do have the option to move it to an upright lie angle, and that's going to play more draw bias. Now, it's important to note when we're looking at hosels like the Ping and the TaylorMade that when you're moving the loft up or down, that does have an effect on the club face angle lots of the times, as well as simply the height the shot's going to go. So typically, as you add loft to a club, it will shut the face a little bit. So not only will the ball go higher, it will fly a little bit further left. The opposite will also be true in the sense that if you take loft off, typically that will open the face a little bit and send the ball a little bit out to the right. Now, a lot of times you can work with this with a fitter and really kind of eliminate the shot you don't like to see. So for me personally, I don't really like a left miss. It's the one that I worry about when I'm stood on the tee box. So in the past, I have sometimes been fitted up a loft, so into a 10.5 head instead of a 9, for example, and then we've lowered the loft down, which opens the face up a little bit, and it just reduces that chance of me hitting it left. Now, if you're the opposite and you hit it out to the right and you don't like that miss, what you can do is go for a lower lofted head, then add some loft to that, which should shut down the face a little bit, bring your ball flight further left. Now, it's important to note all these things do affect other numbers in your fitting. So moving the loft around can actually affect spin, and we can also use this adjustable hosel to control how much spin we're hitting. And we can also use this adjustable hosel to control how much spin we've got. So spin generally directly correlates to your loft. So if you're someone who spins it way too much, going down in loft can take some of that spin off. If you're someone who doesn't spin it enough, adding more loft can really help you add more spin. So hopefully this is showing you why you really should use this tool, and also why you should get fit, because there's so many different ways you can fine tune your driver here. Now, last up for today, I've got the Callaway hosel. Now this is very similar to the Titleist in the sense that there's kind of two cogs that work independently of each other, so you can adjust again kind of the loft and the face angle separately. Now this actually uses a series of letters and numbers, so the numbers are fairly straightforward. You've got like -1, +1, +2, and that's where we're going up and down in terms of loft. So +2 would go up 2 degrees for loft, -1 would take 1 degree of loft off. What's a little bit different here is the letters they use. So they have D for draw bias, so if you wanted to draw the ball more, and then they have N and S, which are like neutral or standard. So depending on how you move this around, depends on what setup you can get. So I could switch it here and put a neutral on. I want it to go fairly straight, but I want to add 2 of loft. Or I could use N and S, which is just completely like neutral loft, standard lie angle. Or I could set it on draw, take loft off. There's loads of different options, but there isn't one to make this more fade biased here. It is basically either draw it more, hit it higher or lower, which is kind of what we saw back with the TaylorMade. So hopefully that's explained what you can do with the adjustability in your driver. If you do have another model and you're not quite sure how it works, drop us a comment below and I'll explain that in either a comment or a short video. But generally, all different brands use a similar style of system, and it's really about knowing if you need it flat, upright, higher or lower, and then seeing how that affects your other numbers.